is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
This is a story that starts like so many do, with something relatively ordinary. A hotel booking, a confused charge, a front desk clerk just trying to do her job. But by the end of this brief and otherwise forgettable summer shift, she'd find herself chatting with a man about knives, sheaths, and self-defense. A man who just a few months later would be arrested and accused of butchering 4 college students in the middle of the night. A man who'd become a household name associated with one of the most horrifying murder cases in recent memory. Of course, we are talking about Bryan Kohberger. This isn't the story of a crime scene or a police chase or really even the trial. This is a smaller, quieter story. It's one of those that we're learning about after the fact, one of those that we're diving deeper into as one of the many warning signs that were out there about Bryan Kohberger. But one of the many warning signs that although you may see something and you may say something, there's not a lot of you can do when something like this takes place. If there's no crime, just very, very uncomfortable, odd behavior. One may call it haunting. It is a story of an ordinary woman working an ordinary shift who found herself face to face with something off, something wrong. But at the time, it just seemed like a strange conversation with an awkward guest. I mean, think of it. You work at a hotel, you're going to get your fair share of interesting guests. This now reads like a warning, though. According to newly released police documents, Bryan Kohberger checked into a hotel in Pullman, Washington on June 30th of 2022. This was 5 months before the murders in Moscow, Idaho. He'd booked the room through Expedia. Nothing fancy, just a night at a modest hotel not far from Washington State University, where he'd just started his PhD in criminology. But he didn't arrive at that front desk like a regular guest. No casual greeting. Hey, how's the weather? Isn't this a lovely area? Smell that fresh, brisk mountain air. No polite check-in. According to the clerk on duty, a woman who happened to be training that day, nonetheless, he came in with a kind of intensity that made her immediately uneasy. He was upset, focused, and fixated on the bill. He believed she'd double-charged him. And instead of calmly asking her to look into it like a normal human being would, because most people aren't sitting behind the hotel desk going, I'm going to double-charge that evil asshole over there. No. He immediately goes into it at 1,000 miles an hour. He got aggressive right away, not physically, but the kind of verbal aggression that makes the air in the room feel a little bit tighter. He demanded answers, raised his voice, insisted she'd made a mistake. Now, it turns out he wasn't entirely wrong. There had been a small billing error, and she quickly corrected it, refunded the charge, and explained the situation. Things like this happen. Most people would have calmed down and walked away. Kohberger did something a little stranger. He changed. And just like that, his demeanor flipped. The same man who'd stormed up to the desk, red-faced, and suddenly was being nice, friendly, approachable even. He smiled, apologized, then, like only an out of touch with reality Bryan Kohberger would do, started flirting. The woman behind the desk felt it to be a little jarring. The shift in mood was fast, too fast. One moment she was being scolded like a child. The next, she was being charmed. Or at least that's what Kohberger seemed to think he was doing in Bryan Kohberger's oh-so-charming ways. But she was trained to smile through weird encounters, so she did. She handed him his key and wished him a good night. She didn't know that she wasn't done with him yet. The next day, she saw him again, this time not at the desk. It was more casual, a hallway encounter. She greeted him, as you do as an employee of a hotel when you see a guest. Hi, have a nice day. The waffle iron is all heated up and ready for you. Instead of just saying hello or commenting on the weather, Kohberger launched into what might be one of the most bone-chilling casual conversations she's ever had and that we've heard of yet in the bizarre world of Bryan Kohberger. When she runs into him in the hallway, in passing, maybe he's going to the breakfast bar, hoping he hasn't missed it yet, because who doesn't like those hotel biscuits? No, he didn't bring up the biscuits. He didn't ask if there was a toaster, the juice selection. Were there any toppings for the yogurt? No. He talked about knives, not kitchen knives, not, hey, are there any things, are there plastic knives down there so I can spread butter on my bagel? No. Not hunting gear either. Not in passing. No, he talked about sheaths. Knife collection, self-defense weapons, as one does when passing the nice, cute hotel worker in the hallway. Gee, I wonder what this woman is into. I know, killing knives, sheaths, self-defense weapons. This seems like a good idea, right, Bryan? And then he talked about them like someone who'd thought long and hard about the subject, like someone who wasn't just collecting for fun, but studying, analyzing, maybe even, in a weird way, fantasizing, as one does about knives. If you're fantasizing about knives, it's time to seek help. At the time, it didn't trigger alarms. Maybe it was weird, but there's a lot of weird people out there. Definitely not flirty, but weird. Wasn't dangerous, and Kohberger, as far as she knew, was just another guest passing through town. But then came November. The murders, the manhunt, the arrest. And suddenly that awkward guest with the intense eyes and the oddly specific interest in knife sheaths wasn't just a hotel memory. He was Bryan Kohberger, the man charged with stabbing 4 University of Idaho students in the early hours of November 13th, 2022. Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves. Killed in their home, brutally, silently, with a knife. After Kohberger's arrest, someone who had heard the Clerk story, possibly a coworker or friend, called the FBI tip line. They remembered that strange conversation about knives, the billing dispute, the name, and that call led investigators to dig up the police report and documentation. Another puzzle piece in a growing mountain of unnerving encounters and red flags and unsettling antidotes that seem so obvious in hindsight, but at the time were just the kind of things most people try to brush off as awkward, not alarming. What makes the story so disturbing is it isn't just what Kohberger said, it's how he said it. The way he flipped from aggression to charm, the way he shifted roles from the outraged customer to the casual flirt to the knife enthusiast in the hallway. It's a performance of normalcy that wasn't really normal at all. More than anything, it's the fact that this happened months before the murders, months before the country even knew who Bryan Kohberger was, long before anyone was paying attention. It begs the question, how many moments like these were there? How many people had encounters with Kohberger that they chalked up to weird vibes? Or that guy's a little off? How many red flags were out there floating in the ether before it all came crashing down in November? It makes us all think about the encounters that we have every single day with people. If you're out there in the world, especially customer service, you're dealing with all sorts of folks. And I'm sure most people who deal with that every day and deal with 20, 30, 40, 50 or more people a day, you could probably guess a few out of there might possibly be killers, will be killers, or are thinking about being a more adventurous killer down the road. And perhaps most chilling of all, if that woman at the front desk hadn't fixed his bill, what then? We're not here to suggest that a billing error would have led to a homicide in the hotel. But in a case filled with behavioral red flags, every small moment becomes a window into something much larger and darker. It wasn't just a billing dispute, it was a glimpse behind the mask. One that slipped just for a moment and then slid right back into place. We now know that Kohberger had a long-standing fascination with crime, with serial killers, with the psychology of murder. He wrote academic papers about it, studied criminal minds, asked questions about emotion and attachment, and allegedly he used all that knowledge not to understand crime, but to try to get away with one. The hotel story adds another layer to that profile, not just because of the knife talk, but because of the performance, the ability to flip personas, to try on different faces to see which one worked. He wasn't just a PhD student in criminology, he was his own case study. And he was collecting data all along. For the woman at the front desk, that encounter may have been brief. A blip on the radar, something you roll your eyes at and vent about on your lunch break. That weird guy, knife sheaths, that wild and crazy, wacky guy. But looking back, it was something far more unsettling. It was a close brush with a killer. Not when he was covered in blood, not when he was behind bars, but when he was calm, smiling, chatting casually about knives in a hotel hallway. The kind of moment that reminds you the scariest people don't always look scary. Sometimes they look like a man checking into a hotel with a duffel bag and a fake smile. Sometimes they're polite, charming even, until they're not. We don't know what Kohberger was planning that day. Maybe nothing. Maybe it was just a hotel stay, but the conversation he started, the topics he chose, and the way he made that woman feel, it sticks. Because when you look at the timeline and what came next, and who he turned out to be, that hallway conversation doesn't just feel awkward. It feels like a warning shot no one heard. Or maybe they did, but no one connected the dots until it was too late. And even if you connected the dots, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you could have done. In the end, that's what so many of these stories have in common. They aren't full-blown crimes. They're not crimes at all. They're shadows, they're glimpses, little ruptures in a mask of normalcy. But they tell us something about who this man was before the country knew his name, before 4 students lost their lives, before a sleepy college town became the epicenter of a nightmare. Bryan Kohberger was already unraveling, and he left breadcrumbs. Some of them led straight to a front desk in Pullman, Washington, where a hotel clerk fixed a billing error, smiled through her discomfort, and tried to forget the strange man who liked to talk about knives. She doesn't forget anymore because now the world knows his name. And so does she. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section here on YouTube, if that's where you're watching us. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, or find us on the podcast platforms, wherever you download podcasts. Do that same search, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, and you'll find us there. I really wonder how many of these little anecdotal stories exist out there. We're hearing a lot of them coming forward, and we probably will for a long time to come. All those little things, all those little breadcrumbs. No way to add them up because they're all individual, all taking place with people who don't know one another. And even if all of those people have the ability to collaborate and corroborate their stories, what could have been done? Probably nothing. Because talking about knives isn't a crime. Being weird isn't a crime. It's the acting out that makes it a crime. But what do you do when all of the signs are there? You can't do anything until they act in the night when no one is looking. That's what makes the story of Kohberger so spooky. So terrifying, because I think we all know someone who may have those sort of tendencies or have that sort of off-putting personality that just doesn't add up. What are they capable of? And what can we do to prevent them from coming through our patio doors in the middle of the night? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, my name is Tony Bruschi. We will talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.